Hi, this is Jackie's Reading Room, and I'm your host, Jackie P. Have you turned some pages today? O alquimista, the alchemist, l'alchimiste, el alquimista, der alchimiste. These are only a few of the many translations of the novel O Alquimista, written by Brazilian lyricist and novelist Paulo Coelho and published in 1988. Since he started writing in the 1980s, and I quote, his work has been published in more than 170 countries and translated into 83 languages. You may have recognized in the languages that I mentioned earlier Portuguese, English, French, Spanish, and German. So only a few. You may know that Mr. Coelho is one of many authors from around the world whose work has been translated into different languages. As you're listening to this, I'd like to ask you, my dear listener, do you read a lot of books in translation? If so, great. And why is that? Do you appreciate works by other writers from around the world? And if not, why not? Is it because you feel like you have enough books that you can read in your own language? Well, while I was doing the research for this episode, I found out that in fact, many Americans read very few translated works. In the article that I was reading, it said that in 2016, Americans read less than 1% of their books in translation of the estimated 300,000 new books published per year. So I was actually trying to understand, why is that? Well, there must be different reasons, but one could think that if you already read, or so speak, read, and understand English, and there are so many books written in English, right? And if that's not even just books published in the US, but if you think of Canada, Australia, England, and so on, right? Perhaps it's enough books. There are lots of books out there, and obviously you have to make a choice every day. That's what I have to do anyway. But I do find that if you read translated works, it allows you to read authors from different parts of the world. And so you open up to perhaps another culture, another way of doing things. And when you think about it, storytelling is universal. Every single country and region of the world has stories to share. And so reading a work that was originally written in another language and then being able to read the translation allows you to have access to all these other works. In terms of translated works, though, it seems that Germany is doing much better than the US, at least. So they say that in 2016, and I quote, 13.6% of new releases there were new translations. So I think that that's a very interesting statistic, and I don't think I would have said that Germany was the most, I guess, the best at doing this in terms of translation, in terms of having their own works written in German translated into other languages, and having other works translated into German, so that the people there can have access to it. Now, if you were to ask me, personally, I always prefer reading a book in its original language. It's a bit like watching a film or a series in its original language as well. Now, in the case of a movie or series, if I watch it at home, I can put the subtitles in English or French. But when it comes to reading, I can only read really in English and in French. Now, I could also read in Portuguese a bit more. This is maybe something that I should work on, I guess. Maybe in 2023, that should be my new one of my New Year's resolutions. I started reading O Alquimista in Portuguese. I have right in front of me a copy of the book in its original language, And I bought that in a used bookstore in Sao Paulo when I went to visit Brazil the first time in 2015. And this was at a time when I was really just starting to learn the language. I could barely understand it, and clearly not read it too much. So when I started reading it, I guess a bit afterwards, it was a bit challenging. But perhaps if I continued to read it now, it would be a bit better since my Portuguese has improved. And as a little note, um, as a language teacher, I would like to say that, and you may know this, that of course, if you're learning a language and you start reading even small things in that language, it really is a very good idea to improve your language, your vocabulary skills. You can see the words, right? So I think I should do that very soon. Finish that book. But you also know that, or you may know about this about me, that I love Scandinavian and Icelandic novels, especially the ones that are in the crime and mystery genre. So, obviously, since I cannot read in Swedish or in Icelandic, I wish, but so far I can't. I have to read these books in translation. So, what happens then is you start to read these books in a translated version, and you start to recognize some translators, and so you can basically, when you pick up the book, you say, "Ah, I'm going to read that book because it's a translator that I like." So I'm going to give you the example of Ragnar Jonas, and I've talked about Ragnar before in different podcasts. And he is one of the famous Icelandic writers out there, and his many books have been translated into different languages. I actually read that he's very popular, translated into French, so in France. And I would say that here, even in Montreal, I see a lot of his titles in French more than in English. And I don't know if you knew this fun fact, that Ragnar actually translated many of Agatha Christie's novels into Icelandic so that Icelandic people could have access to them. And I think that's fantastic. And a translator that has worked on Ragnar's novels is Quentin Bates, and he is also a writer. So he spent many years in Iceland, and so he translates from Icelandic to English. So when I see Quentin Bates' name as the translator, I usually pick up the book because I think he does a very good job at translating. I have great admiration and respect for translators. Another Icelandic author that I discovered recently is Yrsa Sigurdardóttir, and she is the author of crime novels and of children's fiction titles. I read her 2012 book entitled Kuldi, which was translated into English under the title The Undesired. And it was translated by Victoria Cribb, who is another translator that I enjoy. And the book came out, that translated version came out in 2015. So that's the other thing, too, is that the translation will always arrive a bit later, right? Because obviously it has to come out in the first language first. So one of Ragnar's new books has come out in Icelandic, but I have to wait till the English translation comes out. So another title that I have here by Yrsa is entitled The Legacy, and it's one of the 6 titles that is part of the Freya and Huldar series, and they've all been translated by Victoria Cribb, so I'm looking forward to digging into that very, very soon. Another book that I have here is L'énigme de la chambre 622, or in English, The Enigma of Room 622. That was written by Swiss writer Joël Dicker, and it's been also translated in many different languages. He writes, well, I guess this one is a crime novel as well. So he is quite popular. But you may ask, who are the most translated authors out there? So I wanted to find out about that. So I went a bit on the internet to get some information, and I found an article that I will share with you in the notes that is entitled 49 Most Translated Authors from Around the World. And this list was compiled in 2018, so it's, I would say, fairly recent. So before I get to that number one most translated author, try to think of who it could be. But so let me go back a bit in the list. So number 20 is author René Goscinny, and you may know him from the Asterix comic book series. Very popular, I would say, not just in France, but I would say around the world. And this has been translated in many different languages. In number 9, an American writer who is known for his horror type novels. You guessed it, Mr. Stephen King himself. I am not surprised there as well. You can find his books just about anywhere in any language. Number 3, history's most famous playwright, Mr. William Shakespeare. And did you figure out who is the number 1 most translated author from around the world? It is Dame Agatha Christie, indeed, who was mentioned in last episode when I talked about the Queens of Mystery, Agatha Christie and Patricia Highsmith. So listen, why not, after listening to this, go to your local library, local bookstore, and try to find maybe some authors you haven't read that have been translated into the language that you can read, whether that's English and maybe you can read some other language. And either you can offer it to somebody or you can maybe offer it to yourself and find out about a story from another place in the world. And hopefully this will inspire you once again to turn some pages. If you enjoyed this episode, please share. And of course, go back to the other 25 before that one. It's been my pleasure. And until next week, take good care.